Hi, I'm so excited to talk to you about Soho Crime today and a debut author I'm just overjoyed to be sharing with the world for the first time in August, Ramona Emerson. Her debut, Shutter, is a book you are going to want to get your hands on. It is the story of Rita Todachin, a 20-something forensic photographer for the Albuquerque police force, where she has cracked many a case because of her very special skill. She can see ghosts, and these ghosts will point her toward the crime scene elements that other detectives are overlooking. As we meet Rita and we meet a ghost, a particularly tenacious ghost who is hell-bent on haunting her until she can solve this woman's murder, we also come to understand Rita and her past growing up on the Navajo reservation in Tohatchi, New Mexico, and the discovery in her childhood of this special ability and how it separated her from her family and caused her to go to Albuquerque and become a forensic photographer. This book has so much working on so many levels. It's an incredible adventure story. You're not going to be able to stop turning the pages. It is a Southwestern procedural police cartel drama that taps into actual cases that the author, Ramona Emerson, encountered when she was working as a forensic photographer for the Albuquerque police force herself. And it's drawing on Ramona Emerson's own upbringing in the New Mexico Navajo Nation to just create this lush depiction of life on the reservation, this rich and celebratory catalog of Diné culture as told through the point of view of this lovable, wryly funny, and just total badass girl next door protagonist who has to become a superhero in order to bring justice to the underserved. I know that this book will appeal not only to readers of crime fiction, but also to readers of horror and speculative fiction because of some of these just gorgeously gruesome forensic details and the ghostly hauntings. But it's also a book that the Southwest of the United States is a part of the country that's very special and important to me. And I'm so excited to have a book that's set there and that just brings it so vividly to life. So please do check out Shutter by Ramona Emerson, the debut you've been dying to get your hands on.
And hi, everyone. I'm Taz. I'm so excited to be talking to you today about my first acquisition at Soho Crime, which is Philip Miller's The Golden Acre. It's a literary mystery set in present-day Edinburgh, Scotland, which I think will be perfect for your fans of Ian Rankin, Anthony Horowitz, and Donna Tartt. So this book really expertly blends art crime investigation, a murder mystery, and familial tragedy. And the whole thing is written in this gorgeous, lush, immersive literary prose with some fantastic atmospheric Scottish details. Seriously, you will learn so much Scottish slang from this book. So the plot essentially follows a very unhappy art investigator whose name is Thomas Tallis. He has just come to Edinburgh to authenticate a legendary painting, the titular Golden Acre, because the family that owns it, this family of aristocrats, is turning it over to the government of Scotland in exchange for a tax break. It should be a really easy job, which is exactly what Tallis needs because none of his last few jobs have gone well for him at all. Simultaneously, a battle-hardened newspaper reporter, Shona Sanderson, is looking for the one big story that she feels is going to save her newspaper from being shuttered. It looks like she's found it because a series of really gruesome murders are plaguing Edinburgh. First, a famous Scottish painter, then a local politician, and Shona's on the case. Of course, it emerges that these two issues, the painting and the murders, are much more intimately connected than anyone could have predicted. And the characters' two investigations come together in this plot that's genuinely very unpredictable. Even the most diehard mystery fans will have a hard time predicting the ultimate twists, but also ultimately satisfying. And it's one of those something for everyone kind of books. It's got jokes throughout that will have you laughing out loud. I cried at the end. It's a total tearjerker. And it has such a dynamic characters who will really stay with you after the end. And the overarching themes beyond the murder mystery are of parenting, of legacy, of identity. There are critiques of colonialism, of capitalism throughout. There's so much to love here. I really fell in love with it on first read, and I'm so honored to be bringing it to the United States. Our edition comes out in June, and I can't wait to hear what you think of it. And now I will turn it over to Alexa from Soho Teen.
Thank you, Tess. Okay, on to Soho Teen. I am really excited to talk about a debut novel we have coming up in August 2022. That is What's Coming to Me by Francesca Padilla. This is a contemporary YA debut by Dominican author Francesca Padilla, and it has the emotional undertones of really great contemporary YA novels like Emily Pan's The Astonishing Color of After, as well as Erica Sanchez's I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter, overlaid with this really cool pulse-pounding thriller element that also touches on socioeconomic issues. So to get into the plot a little bit, What's Coming to Me stars 17-year-old Minerva Gutierrez. Minerva works a part-time job at Duke's, which is a legendary ice cream stand on the boardwalk in her hometown of Nautilus. Nautilus itself is really wonderfully evoked. It's not a real place, but it's a kind of amalgamation of Rockaway, Coney Island, and Long Island beach town. So it has that classic East Coast beach town vibe. Minerva's boss is abjectly terrible. He's mean. He constantly tries to rip employees off, and most of employees are, in high school. But Minerva has no choice to work there because she has to make ends meet. So that's where a little bit of personal mystery comes in. The reader learns that Minerva is on her own and that her mother has been sick and is not currently present in her life. So she's essentially taking care of herself. So what you do know, though, is that Minerva finds herself living kind of on the razor's edge, in charge of coming up with her own rent, in addition to taking care of, again, her basic needs, which is a tough place for anyone to be in, let alone a 17-year-old. So in the really exciting first chapter, Dukes gets robbed while Minerva is working. And this event, which is like on its face traumatic, has a trickle-down effect in her life and begins to kind of echo into her life. Like, for example, the next day, she gets unceremoniously kicked out of her Second Starts program at school for poor attendance, despite the fact that only a year ago she was an A+ student. And it starts to affect her personal relationships too. Like, her slightly older cousin comes and arrives in her apartment to try to, take care of her after a few months of, again, Minerva being on her own. At that point, though, Minerva is left with only one option, which she hatches with her incredible friend Cece. They decide to pull off a heist at Duke's in order to find money that is rumored to be at the ice cream stand and get what they're rightfully owed, which includes, getting revenge on Minerva's really shady boss in the process. Most relatable of all, Minerva wants out of her dead-end town, and this money is kind of the only way to do it. At least that's what her and Cece reason. The steps they take to pull this off, including recruiting an estranged friend of Minerva's from her previous life, are enough on their own, I think, to sell this book. But the heart comes in as you puzzle together the mystery of what's happening in Minerva's life as she reveals memories of this complicated figure of her mother. Again, and I think a lot of teen readers will relate to that character specifically. And what you do learn, though, is that you learn that her mother fought tooth and nail to give Minerva the opportunities that Minerva really deserves. And Minerva is only trying to get that for herself. The book at its heart is about a teen girl fighting for what she deserves and fighting to take care of herself when no one else is really stepping up to the plate. Francesca highlights the internal struggle of what it means to believe that you deserve to be taken care of, again, which I think a lot of young people are in the place of having to fight for themselves. And the title really speaks well to that. So this book is so many things, and it's also very funny and really fun, but it is a serious treatment of real issues, including living in poverty, caring for a sick caregiver, and also some substance abuse. But the ending is hopeful as well as realistic, uplifting without being too saccharine, and it will make you cry, which is what I personally love in a YA book. So it is kind of this interesting, perfect summer read. Bring it to the beach and read it with some tissues and also maybe an ice cream cone. So without further ado, I'll send it over to Mark Doughton, Soho Press's literary editor.
I am so happy to be here today to join you to talk about the novel Sacrificio by Ernesto Maestro Reed. This is the type of book that is very rare, I think, to get to work on as an editor, a book that can move from the most intimate individual moments to panoramic views of a whole society. In this case, the Cuba of the 90s, which was a time of malaise, corruption, and sort of dying out of the last vestiges of the revolutionary zeal of decades past. Our way into this world, our narrator, is a teenage orphan, Rafa, who finds himself caught up in a group of HIV positive young activists, in fact, revolutionaries who seek to overturn the current order. And the world that they're seeking to overturn is one that is extraordinarily well described and specific. It's a world in which everyone seems to have multiple roles, multiple identities. There's a bit of Le Carré in the spy novel, even as this remains a very, very literary experience. It includes, one of these central focuses is the AIDS sanatoria of the 90s. If you were HIV positive in Cuba in the 90s, you were sent to one of these. And that is where this group of revolutionaries first meet each other and first organize. And I don't want to give away too much of the plot, but I do want to talk just a little bit about what I love about the texture of the book and the way that the narrative voice works, which you'll see almost immediately. Maestro Reed does this incredible job of capturing voices within voices, sort of narrators within narrators. Someone will be telling a story that encloses a second story, and that references the third story. And he does this in order, I think, to create these spaces of sort of multiple identity, both for the individuals and for the country. It is, like I said, sweeping and panoramic, but also it's a story of a young man finding himself and his relationship with a family he finds himself newly in, and this group of revolutionaries. So Ernesto Maestro Reed, it's his first novel in almost 20 years. His first two novels received amazing reviews. He's been a little off the radar since then, but I think this is a book that is well worth the 20-year wait, and I'm so excited for you to get to read it.